A family books their dream vacation on a luxury cruise ship. But on the third night at sea, their teenage daughter discovers something in the restricted areas that should have stayed hidden. This is the story of the Bennett family and the events of January 10th, 2026, aboard the Caribbean Serenity. The Bennett family had been planning this cruise for over a year. Michael Bennett, 42, worked as an operations manager at a manufacturing plant in Atlanta. His wife, Rachel, 39, was a dental hygienist. Their daughter, Emma, was 16, and their son, Tyler, was 13. According to friends and neighbors, the Bennetts were a close-knit family who rarely took vacations due to budget constraints. This 7-day Caribbean cruise was their first major family trip in 5 years. The Caribbean Serenity was a massive vessel operated by Ocean Vista Cruise Lines. The ship could accommodate 3,200 passengers and employed a crew of 1,200. Built in 2022, it featured multiple pools, restaurants, a theater, and shopping areas. It was considered one of the most modern ships in the Caribbean fleet. The Bennetts boarded the ship in Fort Lauderdale on January 8, 2026. Their cabin was on Deck 7, an interior room without a window. According to the ship's manifest, they were assigned room 7248. Emma had been disappointed about not having an ocean view, but her parents explained it was what they could afford. The family explored the ship that first day, attending the mandatory safety drill and having dinner at the main buffet. The first 2 days of the cruise were uneventful. The family participated in ship activities, swam in the pool, and enjoyed their time together. Emma posted photos on social media showing the family smiling on various decks. Tyler played in the arcade. Michael and Rachel attended a wine tasting event. But on the evening of January 10th, something changed the trajectory of their vacation entirely. According to Emma's later testimony, she and Tyler had attended the teen club event that evening. The event ended at 9:30 p.m. Tyler wanted to go back to the cabin, but Emma wanted to explore. She told Tyler to go back without her. Security footage from Deck 7 shows Tyler entering the family cabin alone at 9:42 p.m. Emma, according to her statement, decided to walk around the ship. She took an elevator to Deck 12, one of the upper decks that featured an outdoor walking track. The deck was mostly empty at this hour. Most passengers were at the evening show or in the casino. Emma walked along the track, listening to music on her phone. She noticed a door she hadn't seen before. It was marked Crew Only, Authorized Personnel. The door was slightly ajar, which Emma found odd. She approached it and heard voices coming from inside. Male voices speaking in what sounded like an argument. Emma should have walked away. But curiosity got the better of her. She pulled the door open slightly and looked inside. What she saw would haunt her for months. Inside was a corridor she'd never seen before. Industrial, with exposed pipes and harsh fluorescent lighting, nothing like the polished passenger areas. About 20 feet down the corridor, she saw 3 men. 2 were wearing crew uniforms. The third was not. He was wearing regular clothes and appeared to be injured. His face was bruised and his lip was bleeding. One of the crew members was holding the injured man's arm. The other was speaking into a radio. Emma couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, but she heard fragments. Deck 14, storage area, make it disappear. The injured man looked directly at Emma. Their eyes met. He tried to say something, but one of the crew members shoved him, forcing him to keep walking. The 3 men turned a corner and disappeared from Emma's view. Emma backed away from the door, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure what she'd witnessed, but it felt wrong. Very wrong. She quickly walked back to the main deck area and took the elevator down to her cabin. She found her parents and Tyler watching a movie. Emma told her parents what she'd seen. Michael was skeptical. He said Emma had probably misunderstood what was happening. Maybe the injured man was a crew member who'd been in an accident. Maybe they were taking him to the medical bay. Rachel suggested Emma was letting her imagination run wild, but Emma was insistent. She said the man looked scared, that the crew members had seemed aggressive, that something was definitely wrong. Tyler suggested they report it to ship security. Michael agreed that might be a good idea, just to be safe. The family went to the security office on deck 4. They arrived at 10:18 p.m. The security officer on duty was Carlos Mendez. According to his report, Michael explained that his daughter had witnessed what she believed to be an altercation involving crew members and an injured passenger. Mendez asked Emma to describe what she'd seen. She provided a detailed account. Mendez typed notes into his computer. He assured the family that he would look into it. He asked which deck Emma had been on and where exactly she'd seen the door. Emma said deck 12, near the aft walking track. Mendez said there were crew corridors throughout the ship, and that crew members sometimes had to escort intoxicated or disruptive passengers to security holding areas. He suggested Emma had probably witnessed security dealing with a problematic guest. Emma insisted it hadn't looked like that. Mendez said he would review security footage and follow up if necessary. The family returned to their cabin. Emma had trouble sleeping that night. She kept thinking about the injured man's face, the fear in his eyes, the way he'd tried to speak to her before being shoved forward. The next morning, January 11th, Emma convinced her father to go back to deck 12 with her. They found the area where she'd seen the crew door, but when they reached the location, there was no door, just a solid wall. Emma was confused. She was certain this was the spot. Michael suggested maybe she'd been on a different deck or in a different location, but Emma was adamant this was the place. Frustrated and confused, Emma decided to look around the ship more carefully. She noticed something she hadn't paid attention to before. Throughout the ship, in areas where crew corridors connected to passenger areas, there were doors designed to blend into walls. Some were painted to match surrounding surfaces. Some were disguised behind decorative panels. Emma started photographing these hidden doors with her phone. She found at least 8 locations where crew access points were cleverly concealed. This gave her confidence that what she'd seen the night before was real, even if the door had since been hidden. That afternoon, while her family was at the pool, Emma returned to the security office. A different officer was on duty. Emma asked to speak with Carlos Mendez. The officer said Mendez was off duty and asked if he could help. Emma explained she'd filed a report the night before about witnessing something concerning. The officer checked the computer. He said he didn't see any report filed under the Bennett name. Emma insisted she'd been there with her family. The officer checked again. Nothing. He suggested maybe it hadn't been entered into the system yet. Emma asked when Mendez would be back on duty. The officer said not until the following day. Emma felt a growing sense of unease. She returned to her cabin and told her parents about the missing report. Michael was frustrated. He said they'd made the report in good faith, and if the ship's security wasn't taking it seriously, there wasn't much more they could do. Rachel suggested they just enjoy the rest of their vacation and not worry about it. But Emma couldn't let it go. She spent the rest of that day and the following morning trying to piece together what she'd seen. She went back to deck 12 multiple times, looking for any evidence of the door or the corridor. She found nothing. On January 12th, at approximately 3 p.m., Emma was walking through the main promenade when she saw him, the injured man from 2 nights earlier. He was sitting at a bar, drinking a beer, talking with a woman. His face no longer showed signs of injury, no bruises, no split lip. He looked completely normal. Emma approached him cautiously. When she got close, she said, "Excuse me, were you on deck 12 2 nights ago?" The man looked at her with no recognition. He said, "Sorry, I think you have me confused with someone else." Emma insisted she'd seen him. The man's companion, the woman he'd been talking to, asked if there was a problem. Emma described what she'd witnessed: the corridor, the crew members, the injuries. The man laughed. He said Emma must have seen someone else because he hadn't been in any crew areas and certainly hadn't been injured. He showed Emma his face, pointing out there were no marks. The woman suggested Emma had maybe seen something on TV and confused it with real life. Emma backed away, apologizing, but she was certain it was the same man, same height, same build, same facial features. How could his injuries have healed so completely in just 36 hours? She took a photo of the man discreetly as she walked away. Later, she compared it to her memory of what she'd seen. She was absolutely certain it was him. That evening, Emma's family had dinner at one of the specialty restaurants. Emma was quiet throughout the meal. Tyler asked if she was still obsessing over what she'd seen. Emma said she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong on this ship. After dinner, around 8:30 p.m., Emma excused herself to use the restroom. The restaurant was on deck 6. Emma walked down a corridor toward the bathrooms. She passed a door marked "Staff Only." As she walked by, the door opened and someone grabbed her arm. It was Carlos Mendez, the security officer from the first night. He pulled Emma into the staff corridor and closed the door. Emma was frightened. She demanded to know what he was doing. Mendez spoke quickly and quietly. He said, "You need to stop asking questions. Stop looking for doors. Stop bothering passengers. What you saw the other night wasn't what you think it was." Emma asked what it was then. Mendez said, "We were filming a reality show. Some passengers are actors. Some situations are staged. It's all fake. Entertainment. That's why the report disappeared. That's why the guy doesn't have injuries anymore. Makeup, acting. You stumbled onto a filming location." Emma asked why they were being so secretive about it. Mendez said the production company required it, that revealing the show's filming would ruin the whole concept. He said Emma had signed a waiver when boarding that gave the cruise line permission to use footage of passengers. He claimed Emma's family might appear in the show. Emma wasn't sure she believed him, but his explanation was at least plausible. Reality shows did film on cruise ships. She'd seen them on TV. Mendez told Emma to just enjoy the rest of her vacation and forget about what she'd seen. He opened the door and let her leave. Emma returned to the restaurant and told her family what Mendez had said. Michael was relieved. He said that explained everything. Rachel agreed. Tyler thought it was cool they might be on TV, but Emma still felt uneasy. Something about Mendez's demeanor had been off. He'd seemed nervous, almost desperate to convince her. The cruise continued. The ship visited ports in Jamaica and Grand Cayman. The Bennett family went on shore excursions. Emma tried to relax and enjoy herself, but she couldn't fully shake her suspicions. On January 14th, the final full day of the cruise, Emma was on deck 10 when she encountered the man from the bar again. He was alone this time. Emma approached him again and directly asked, "Are you an actor? Is this all part of a reality show?" The man looked confused. He said, "What are you talking about?" Emma explained that security had told her the ship was filming a reality show, that what she'd seen had been staged. The man laughed and said there was no reality show, that she'd been lied to. He started to walk away. Emma grabbed his arm. "Then what did I see? Why were you injured? Why were crew members dragging you through restricted areas?" The man pulled his arm free. He looked around nervously. Then he leaned close and whispered, "Some things aren't meant to be seen. Sometimes people bet on things they shouldn't. Sometimes they don't pay up. Sometimes lessons need to be taught, but everyone's fine. Everyone goes home. Just forget about it." He walked away quickly, leaving Emma standing alone, more confused than ever. The ship returned to Fort Lauderdale on January 15th. The Bennett family disembarked. During the customs process, Michael was pulled aside by a ship security officer. The officer said there had been a charge added to their account. When Michael asked what for, the officer said it was for damages to their cabin. Michael protested that they hadn't damaged anything. The officer showed him a photo of their cabin with a broken lamp and a stained carpet. Michael insisted they hadn't broken the lamp or stained the carpet. The officer said the cleaning crew had documented it and the charge was legitimate. Michael demanded to speak with a supervisor. After 30 minutes of arguing, the charge was suddenly waived. The officer said it must have been a system error, but the message was clear. The cruise line was demonstrating they had power over the passengers, that they could cause problems if they wanted to. The Bennett family drove home to Atlanta. Emma researched everything she could about cruise ship security, hidden areas, and incidents at sea. She found dozens of stories about passengers vanishing from cruise ships, about crimes being covered up, about ships operating in international waters where laws were murky. She also found stories about illegal gambling operations on ships, about passengers who lost large amounts of money and were threatened by loan sharks, about crew members who moonlit as enforcers for criminal enterprises. Emma became convinced that what she'd witnessed was related to illegal activity, that the injured man had been in debt to someone, crew members were involved, that security had lied to her about the reality show to make her stop investigating. But Emma had no proof, no documentation. The security report had disappeared. The man she'd seen denied anything happened. The cruise line had made it clear they could retaliate if the family caused trouble. Michael forbade Emma from talking about it anymore. He said they were lucky nothing worse had happened, that Emma had gotten involved in something she shouldn't have, that they needed to move on. But Emma couldn't move on. She created a blog detailing her experience. She posted on social media. She tried to find the man from the ship. She contacted maritime safety organizations. Most people dismissed her story as the overactive imagination of a teenager. Some suggested she'd misinterpreted innocent events. A few believed her, but said there was nothing that could be done without evidence. 3 months later, in April 2026, a passenger went missing from the Caribbean Serenity during a cruise to the Bahamas. The man was reported missing by his wife. The ship's crew conducted a search, but the passenger was never found. The official report stated he likely went overboard, possibly suicide or accidental. Emma saw the news story. She looked up the missing man's name and photo. She searched through her phone's photos from the cruise, and there he was. In the background of one of her photos from the promenade, the missing man, talking to one of the crew members Emma had seen in that restricted corridor on January 10th. Emma contacted the missing man's family. She told them about what she'd witnessed. She sent them the photo. The family hired a private investigator who reviewed Emma's account and the photograph. The investigator believed there might be merit to Emma's suspicions. The family attempted to sue Ocean Vista Cruise Lines. The cruise line's attorneys argued there was no evidence of foul play, that the missing passenger's disappearance was an unfortunate accident, that Emma Bennett's testimony was unreliable speculation from a teenager. The case was dismissed in August 2026 due to lack of evidence. The cruise line released a statement expressing sympathy for the missing passenger's family while maintaining that their ships operated with the highest safety and security standards. Emma Bennett continues to speak out about her experience. She advocates for stronger regulations of cruise ship security and transparency. She maintains that what she witnessed on January 10, 2026, was evidence of criminal activity being covered up by cruise personnel. Ocean Vista Cruise Lines has never commented specifically on Emma's allegations beyond their initial dismissal of them as misunderstandings. The Caribbean Serenity continues to operate Caribbean routes, carrying thousands of passengers every week. This case demonstrates the complex legal and jurisdictional challenges of incidents occurring on ships in international waters. It raises questions about how cruise lines handle security incidents and what oversight exists for their operations. For the Bennett family, what was supposed to be a dream vacation became a source of ongoing trauma and unanswered questions. Emma's story serves as a reminder to stay aware of surroundings even in seemingly safe vacation environments. It illustrates how witnesses to potential crimes can be dismissed, discouraged, or intimidated into silence. And it highlights how some truths may never be fully uncovered when they occur in the liminal spaces of ships at sea, beyond the reach of normal law enforcement. The Caribbean Serenity sails on. Passengers book their dream vacations. Most have wonderful experiences. But somewhere in the restricted corridors and hidden spaces of that massive ship, there may be secrets that will never come to light. A couple books a romantic anniversary cruise to celebrate 15 years of marriage, but the cabin they're assigned has a history that begins to reveal itself in terrifying ways. This is the story of David and Jennifer Morrison and the events of February 3rd through February 10th, 2026, aboard the Pacific Majesty. David Morrison, 43, was a financial advisor in San Diego. His wife, Jennifer, 41, worked as a nurse at a local hospital. They'd been married for 15 years and had 2 children, both staying with Jennifer's parents during the cruise. According to friends, the Morrisons had been going through a rough patch in their marriage. David had been working long hours. Jennifer felt neglected. They'd been in couples counseling for 6 months. This cruise was meant to help them reconnect. The Pacific Majesty was operated by Trans-Pacific Cruise Lines. The ship accommodated 2,800 passengers and had a crew of 900. Built in 2019, it offered 7-day cruises along the Mexican coast, departing from San Diego. The Morrisons boarded on February 3, 2026. They'd splurged on a balcony cabin, number 9247, on Deck 9. The cabin featured a king-size bed, a sitting area, and a private balcony overlooking the ocean. According to the ship's records, the cabin had been recently renovated after a period of being out of service. The first night aboard was pleasant. The couple had dinner at the main dining room, attended the welcome show, and returned to their cabin around 11 p.m. Jennifer commented that the cabin felt cold despite the climate control showing 72 degrees. David adjusted the thermostat, but the temperature didn't seem to change. Around 2 a.m., Jennifer woke up. She told investigators later that she had heard what sounded like crying, soft sobbing coming from somewhere in the cabin. She sat up and listened. The sound seemed to be coming from the bathroom. She woke David and asked if he heard it. He said he didn't hear anything. Jennifer got up and checked the bathroom. It was empty and silent. She returned to bed, chalking it up to sounds from adjacent cabins traveling through the walls. The next morning, February 4th, the ship docked in Cabo San Lucas. The Morrisons went on a snorkeling excursion. They had a good day, enjoying activities together and feeling more connected. They returned to the ship that evening. At dinner, they met another couple at their assigned table. The other couple, Robert and Susan Chen, mentioned they'd sailed on the Pacific Majesty before. During conversation, Jennifer casually mentioned their cabin number. Susan's face changed. She looked at her husband, then back at Jennifer. "You're in 9247?" Susan asked. Jennifer confirmed. Susan said, "Wow, I'm surprised they're using that cabin again." David asked what she meant. Robert tried to change the subject, but Susan continued. She said that cabin had been where something terrible had happened about a year ago. A woman had died in that cabin. Susan didn't know all the details, but she'd heard other passengers talking about it on a previous cruise. Jennifer felt a chill. David asked how Susan knew this. Susan said cruise ship enthusiasts share stories online, that certain cabins on certain ships develop reputations. 9247 was one of them. David dismissed it as gossip and superstition, but Jennifer couldn't shake the information. After dinner back in the cabin, she researched on her phone. She found a cruise forum where passengers discussed their experiences. She searched for Pacific Majesty Cabin 9247. Several results came up. One post from March 2025 mentioned that the cabin had been closed for months after an incident. Another post from someone who'd sailed in April 2025 said they'd heard a passenger had committed suicide in that cabin. A third post claimed the cabin was haunted. Jennifer showed David what she'd found. He said it was just internet rumors, that people made up stories for attention, that cruise lines wouldn't assign them to a cabin where someone had died without disclosure. Jennifer wanted to request a cabin change. David said they'd paid extra for the balcony cabin, and he wasn't going to downgrade based on unverified gossip. They went to bed. Around 1:30 a.m., Jennifer woke up again. This time, she heard more than crying. She heard a voice, a woman's voice speaking softly. The words were indistinct, but it sounded like someone was having a conversation in the room. Jennifer turned on the bedside lamp. The cabin was empty. David was asleep beside her. She got up and checked every space, the bathroom, the balcony, the closet. Nothing. She stood in the middle of the cabin, listening. Silence. She was about to return to bed when she noticed something. The sliding door to the balcony was open about 3 inches. She was certain they'd closed and locked it before going to sleep. Jennifer walked over and closed it, making sure it latched securely. She went back to bed but couldn't sleep. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling watched. Around 3 a.m., she finally drifted off. The next morning, February 5th, Jennifer told David about the open door and the voice. David suggested Jennifer was stressed and not sleeping well, that her mind was playing tricks on her. Jennifer insisted something was wrong with the cabin. David agreed to speak with guest services about it just to appease her. At guest services, David explained that his wife was uncomfortable in the cabin. The representative asked what the issue was. David said his wife believed the cabin might be haunted. The representative maintained a professional expression, but Jennifer could see she was trying not to smile. The representative checked her computer. She said there were no available balcony cabins for a transfer. They could move to an interior cabin on Deck 5 if Jennifer preferred, but there would be no refund for the difference in price. Jennifer declined. David thanked the representative, and they left. Jennifer was frustrated that David had framed it as her being irrational. They argued about it. David accused Jennifer of trying to sabotage their anniversary trip. Jennifer said she was genuinely scared, and David was dismissing her feelings. They spent the rest of the day barely speaking. That evening, they had dinner in silence. Neither wanted to return to the cabin, so they stayed at the casino for several hours. David played blackjack. Jennifer sat at a slot machine, not really playing, just killing time. Around midnight, they finally returned to their cabin. As soon as they entered, Jennifer felt something was different. The air felt heavier. The temperature was even colder than before. David went to the bathroom. Jennifer stood by the bed looking around. She noticed something on the desk that hadn't been there before, a piece of paper. She walked over and picked it up. It was from a notepad, the kind provided by the cruise line. Written on it, in handwriting that was shaky and uneven, were the words, "He pushed me." Jennifer's hands started trembling. She called for David. He came out of the bathroom and she showed him the note. David examined it. He said Jennifer must have written it and forgotten. Or maybe it was a prank. Maybe housekeeping had left it as a joke. Jennifer insisted she hadn't written it and that housekeeping wouldn't do something like that. David said there had to be a logical explanation. He crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. He said they needed to stop feeding into paranoia and just try to enjoy their vacation. They got ready for bed. Jennifer took a sleeping pill, desperate for rest. She fell asleep around 1 a.m. At 3:30 a.m., Jennifer bolted awake. She was freezing. Her breath was visible in the air, and standing at the foot of the bed was a figure, a woman in a white nightgown. Her face was pale, her eyes dark and hollow. She was staring directly at Jennifer. Jennifer screamed. David woke up disoriented. He turned on the light. The figure was gone. The cabin was empty, but the temperature was still frigid. David could see his breath now, too. Jennifer was sobbing, saying she'd seen someone. David tried to calm her down. He checked the entire cabin again. Nothing. He called guest services and reported that their cabin's air conditioning was malfunctioning. A maintenance technician arrived within 20 minutes. The technician checked the system. He said it was functioning normally and set to 72 degrees, but he agreed the cabin felt unusually cold. He adjusted some settings and said it should warm up. He left. David and Jennifer sat on the bed wrapped in blankets. Jennifer begged David to believe her. She described the woman she'd seen. David said Jennifer had been in a nightmare state between sleep and waking. That sleep paralysis could cause vivid hallucinations. But Jennifer was adamant about what she'd seen. She grabbed her phone and searched for information about the death in their cabin. She found a news article from February 2025, exactly 1 year earlier. The article reported that a passenger named Michelle Garcia, age 38, had died aboard the Pacific Majesty. The death occurred in the early morning hours of February 6, 2025. Michelle had been traveling with her husband, Carlos Garcia. The cause of death was initially listed as accidental drowning in the bathtub. But a follow-up article from April 2025 revealed that Michelle's family had disputed the accidental death finding. They claimed Michelle would never take a bath at night. She always showered in the mornings. They suspected foul play. An investigation was conducted. Ultimately, no charges were filed. Carlos Garcia maintained his wife had been drinking heavily and had an accident. The case was closed. Jennifer showed David the articles. The cabin number wasn't mentioned, but the timing matched. Michelle had died February 6th, early morning. Tomorrow would be February 6th. Jennifer said they needed to leave the cabin immediately. David was finally taking her seriously. He agreed they should request an emergency cabin change. It was now 4:30 a.m. They called guest services. A manager came to their cabin within 15 minutes. Jennifer explained everything. The cold temperatures, the sounds, the note, the apparition. She showed the manager the articles about Michelle Garcia. The manager listened politely but skeptically. He said he couldn't confirm or deny if Michelle Garcia had died in this specific cabin. Privacy regulations prevented him from disclosing that information. However, the manager agreed to move them to a different cabin immediately given their distress. A room attendant brought their luggage. They gathered their belongings and were transferred to cabin 7321, an interior cabin on deck 7. It was smaller, no balcony, but Jennifer didn't care. They settled into the new cabin around 6 a.m. Exhausted, they finally fell asleep. They woke around noon. Both felt better in the new cabin. The temperature was normal. The atmosphere felt lighter. They had lunch and tried to salvage their day. That evening, while walking on deck, they encountered Robert and Susan Chen again. Susan asked how things were going. Jennifer explained they'd changed cabins. Susan wasn't surprised. She said she'd looked into it more after their dinner conversation. She'd found posts from Michelle Garcia's sister on social media. The sister had stated that Michelle died in cabin 9247, that Michelle had told family members before the cruise that she was afraid of her husband, that he'd been increasingly controlling and violent. Susan showed them screenshots on her phone. Michelle's sister believed Carlos had murdered Michelle and staged it to look like an accident. But without sufficient evidence, the case had been closed. The cruise line had renovated the cabin and put it back into rotation after a few months. Jennifer felt sick. She'd spent 3 nights in a room where a woman had possibly been murdered, a woman who was now trying to communicate, trying to tell her story. David asked what they should do with this information. Susan suggested they contact Michelle's family, let them know what Jennifer had experienced, that it might provide them some comfort to know Michelle's spirit was still trying to reveal the truth. Jennifer found Michelle's sister, Sofia Garcia, on social media. She sent a direct message explaining who she was and what she'd experienced. Sofia responded within hours. She said she believed everything Jennifer described. She said Michelle had always been sensitive to cold and that she would often write notes to herself when she was scared. Sophia asked if Jennifer would be willing to provide a statement about her experience. Jennifer agreed. Sophia said she was working with a private investigator to gather new evidence to potentially reopen Michelle's case. Jennifer's testimony about the paranormal experiences might not be admissible in court, but it added to the pattern of evidence suggesting something terrible had happened in that cabin. The Morrisons finished their cruise. They disembarked February 10th, 2026. Jennifer provided a detailed written statement to Sofia Garcia and her investigator. The statement included the note she'd found, the apparition she'd seen, and the timeline of events. In March 2026, new evidence emerged in Michelle Garcia's case. A crew member who had been working on the Pacific Majesty during Michelle's death came forward with information. The crew member stated they'd heard arguing coming from cabin 9247 on the night of Michelle's death. They'd considered reporting it, but were discouraged by supervisors who said passenger arguments were common and not their concern. This testimony, combined with other circumstantial evidence, led prosecutors to reopen the investigation. Carlos Garcia was questioned again. Under pressure, his story began to show inconsistencies. In June 2026, he was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The trial began in October 2026. Jennifer Morrison was called as a witness. While she couldn't testify about paranormal experiences, she testified about finding the note and the unusual circumstances in the cabin. Her testimony helped establish that something violent had occurred in that room. Carlos Garcia was convicted in December 2026. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. During sentencing, Sofia Garcia thanked Jennifer Morrison for speaking up. She said Jennifer's willingness to share her experience had been a crucial part of bringing her sister's killer to justice. The Pacific Majesty's cabin 9247 was permanently removed from service following the trial. The space was converted into storage. Trans-Pacific Cruise Lines faced criticism for not disclosing the cabin's history to passengers. They updated their policies to require disclosure of any cabin where a death had occurred within the previous 5 years. Jennifer and David Morrison's marriage ultimately survived the ordeal. Jennifer says the cruise, despite its horror, reminded them both of what mattered. They learned to communicate better and take each other's concerns seriously. They returned to counseling and worked through their issues. Jennifer remains convinced that Michelle Garcia's spirit was trying to communicate the truth about her death. She believes Michelle guided her to find the note and pushed her to investigate. She says she'll never forget the woman in the white nightgown standing at the foot of her bed. This case demonstrates how vacation environments can harbor dark secrets. It shows the importance of trusting instincts when something feels wrong. And it illustrates how persistence in seeking truth can lead to justice, even when that truth comes from the most unexpected sources. For the Garcia family, the conviction brought some measure of closure. Michelle's story was finally heard. Her death was acknowledged as the crime it was, and in a strange way, her spirit played a role in ensuring her killer faced justice. Cabin 9247 remains closed, but passengers on the Pacific Majesty sometimes report feeling cold spots on Deck 9. Some hear crying late at night, and crew members occasionally find notes with shaky handwriting, even though no paper is stored in that converted storage space anymore. Michelle Garcia may have found peace, but her presence lingers, a reminder of what happened in that cabin, and a warning that some secrets refuse to stay hidden, no matter how much anyone tries to bury them.